Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat 1 video. With us coming off that really fucking cool Ghostface trailer.
Look at my boy using that saucepan.
It really got me thinking, who exactly was the best horror guest character in Mortal Kombat's history? Because we've had a plethora of different names, different faces, that have ripped and tore their way through it. But who exactly is the cream of the crop for the Mortal Kombat universe? Who fits into the mythos the best? Well, in today's video, that is what we will be talking about and analyzing. So it should be pretty obvious, but this video in itself will be completely lore focused. Plus, in the nature of Mortal Kombat, we will be ever so lightly power scaling these characters. Now that said, quick disclaimer, going forward there will be a few rules here. First being, what version of the character we will be tackling. Because considering the nature of reboots and alternative interpretations, to maintain a sense of clarity for this video, I will be solely focusing on their more well-known counterparts, the versions that did ultimately put them on the map. With that also said, this does bring us onto our characters here and the term horror itself. Because whilst many of these names have started from those grassroots, they all kind of have branched off in their own different direction here. Some for better and some for worse. God bless you, Romulus and Prey. So, with that said, characters viable for this list will exclusively be those that derive from the genre, and to not overcomplicate things, I only will be exclusively talking about horror movie characters. But before we do begin, as always guys, you know what to do. If you like what we do here and wish to see more, please don't forget to subscribe. But if you really want to go that extra step, please do give this video a thumbs up. It's a small thing, but it goes a really long way with supporting the channel in the algorithm. Anywho, let's dive right into things. Now, at the very top of the list, we do have Freddy Kruger, the nightmare dream killer of Elm Street, and NetherRealm's first take on a horror guest character. And I gotta be for real, they definitely did not disappoint, even if his movie tie-in was interesting. Yet, even with that in mind, Freddy did have a pretty monumentous impact on the franchise, effectively being the benchmark for many future guest characters. So, how was his integration on the MK side of things? Well, it was done pretty goddamn well, because due to the supernatural nightmare hellscape that Freddy derives from, it does kind of make it a one-sided affair. But NetherRealm knew the creative issues that came with this, and thus did find an interesting way of bringing him into the fold, creating the Dream Realm as it was his plane of reality, something that was not done or has been done since for any future DLC characters. But he would also have some narrative ties, being brought to the mortal plane by Shao Kahn, now being granted a mortal body. And this is honestly a really cool and very smart way of working around those narrative constrictions, because it does expand on the current lore of Mortal Kombat with the Dream Realm, whilst also respecting the source material, as methods like this have typically been used in the past to defeat Freddy. So all in all, it's a pretty well-rounded inclusion. But how does he compare to the rest of the Mortal Kombat canon? And once more, it's done really well. Demons aren't exactly anything new to the Mortal Kombat universe. But what really sets Freddy apart from beings like Quan Chi or even Shinnok is that he still does retain all of his nightmare abilities on the mortal plane. Thus, his only real weakness is that of his mortal body. But that's kind of the added benefit of his inclusion here. Because of this, he isn't too overpowered amongst the MK cast, at least from a supernatural perspective. Thus, we do start off this list with the bar being set pretty goddamn high, which actually makes the next character we talk about here a very interesting contrast. Jason Voorhes, the immortal slasher of Crystal Lake. Now look, these two go together like peanut butter and jelly, but Jason himself here, at least narratively, is a bit of a setback for what we got with Freddy. Not that he doesn't fit into the universe, he sure as hell does. But Jason himself doesn't quite have the narrative benefit of actually being interwoven to MK. In fact, most guest characters going forth don't quite have those vignettes that immerse them into the world. Even so, from what we know of Jason, he does settle into the universe fairly well, being a super-powered slasher zombie with ties to the Necronomicon, at least depending on how canon you want to look at Jason Goes to Hell. And zombies, kind of like demons, aren't anything new to the series, as we've had characters like Zombie Liu Kang, and up to a certain extent, the revenants, wraiths, and specters. So an undead supernatural being isn't exactly something alien to the series. However, I think that the biggest curb with Jason is that from a strictly narrative perspective, he's pretty bare here. But that's also kind of the charm of Jason. He's the silent yet effective formidable killing machine who definitely does not mince his words. And most of his character honestly comes through his actions here. So I do think that the strongest point of his character is more his gameplay. Thus, he is pretty light on lore. But of course now, how does he fit into the world of MK? Well, relatively well. He's not incredible, but that's kind of largely due to the bar that Freddy had set. Yet, despite those problems and issues and lack of actual character, I still believe Jason to be a pretty welcomed inclusion. Now here are where things get a little bit wacky and intergalactic, because we're going to touch on a personal favourite of mine, the Hunter of Worlds, the Predator. Now the Yautja are a great inclusion to the series, retaining that iconic stalker in the night, before the veil finally lifts into that classic creature feature. Whilst the Predator does lack some martial prowess, they more than make up for it with their brute force and impressive array of tools. Like, from a physicality perspective, they really do their jobs very well, and the guns and toys they bring to the fight is the icing on the cake. Plus, their hunter culture makes them a very viable figure that fits into any possible premise. Like an outward-focused movie where he's hunting the Shogun in the Kwartan jungles? That's fucking cinema, man! The Predator is a super versatile character, allowing him to be malleable in nearly any premise. But with that said, does he fit into the MK universe well? Arguably so. There's a bit of a double-edged sword to this. The biggest hurdle and issue that comes with the Yautja is the fact that they are intergalactic beings. I know to some, it's one of the many conflicting issues that people have with Omni-Man, Kronika, and the Titans. But I think with what the Predator actually brings, it does allow us to overlook these issues. Because the Yautja aren't immortal beings, they are grounded figures that can indeed die. Thus, I do really think they tick a lot of really good big check marks here, despite some of the issues that people do have with intergalactic beings. Now moving to the other side of the ring is a character that is kind of a double-edged blade. I am of course talking about the Xenomorph, aka the Alien. Now the Xenomorph is a particularly interesting horror icon. Because of any of the characters here, the Xenomorph can range from murderous, unstoppable killing machine to mindless hive beast. So the quality of the Xenomorph character does largely fluctuate from creative mind to creative mind. They are arguably the most dangerous character on this list here. So much so that, honestly, he might be a little bit too overpowered for MK in some ways. Because here's the thing, the Xenos aren't known for their fighting power or skill. If anything, it's their ability to scrap, kill, and seamlessly maim. A singular Xenos in the Mortal Kombat universe can do a lot of damage. But there's also the depiction that they are pack hunters. They're always trying to reproduce. And along with that, in a series where everyone's drenched in blood and it gets everywhere, that acid blood is going to be insane. So that's what I mean by he might be a little bit too OP in that regard. But the one thing that I feel lets him settle back into the universe well is that this particular Xenomorph sits in the same unique character corner that Freddy does, being tailored to be immersed in the Mortal Kombat universe. With Baraka as his host, the Xenomorph is able to get that spliced hybrid DNA, taking the insanely sharp blades of the Tarkatan. So we get this unique new hybrid breed of Xenomorph that is tailored to the MK universe. One that blends both worlds together really well. So even with the issues I did point out, I do find him to be a pretty great inclusion here. I just think that from a world and lore perspective, he might be a tad bit too overpowered with the acidic blood. Either way though, this very unique breed of Xenomorph definitely does place him at the most dangerous of all of these characters here. But now we come to the other end of the spectrum, one in the form of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface. Now, Leatherface by all intents and purposes is a pretty iconic face of horror. really having pushed the limits of its time with its very brutal grindhouse style. Yet, even with these accolades under his belt, how does he fit into the MK universe? Well, not too great. Although from a visual aesthetic and character design, the chainsaw alone gets him into the universe. But the weakest part of Leatherface's character is honestly his character. Truth be told, the Sawyer family is just as important to the Texas Chainsaw series as Leatherface himself is. They go hand in hand with each other with what they bring to the series. And honestly, in my opinion, is when he's actually at his best. And I think another really big issue is when you take Leatherface and then you place him into the Mortal Kombat universe. Because it kind of becomes the literal meme of coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb. Whilst the Predator and Jason have the added benefit of being supernatural or extraterrestrial, Leatherface by all intents and purposes is anything but that. He's one of the more mortal characters of this list, and whilst that adds a sinister layer to his character, in comparison to everyone else we kind of have here, he's relatively tame. Although I'm definitely not gonna dismiss him, as it's Leatherface. I do think he's at the lower end of things considering the pedigree of Earthrealm fighters, as well as the fact that most of his character is largely reflected through his gameplay. Now we have the assassin sent from the past, the T-800, the Terminator. And this is a particularly interesting pick and choice, because in most instances, the Skynet thing would only tick a few boxes here. However, with the rules I've established for how a guest character can fit into the series, it's actually pretty shocking how the T-800 takes a lot of them, because the overwhelming possibility of a cybernetic threat isn't anything new to the Mortal Kombat universe, being largely spearheaded by the Cyberlink way. And along with that, the whole sending something or someone to the past is very akin to Raiden from Mortal Kombat 9, which in turn is also heavily complemented due to the nature of Mortal Kombat 11's story. So in terms of story and narrative elements, the T-800 embodies them very well. But what about Skynet, the system he originates from? Well, honestly, I'm surprised that we haven't seen anything like that in the MK universe, especially with the very heavy emphasis of the special forces from X to 11. So like I said, the T-800 just ticks a lot of really big boxes here. As for how he fits into the universe, I generally think that the T-800 might sit in the same position that the alien does here, in the sense that he may kind of be a bit too powerful, with a metal exoskeleton and no pain receptors. The Terminator gets the added benefit of being your stereotypical horror slasher, just not one entirely bound by blood. Thus, he might actually be a little bit overtuned in that manner, unless you bring some really heavy artillery of very specific magic. Now, the placement of this character is largely going to depend on your own feelings about time travel, as well as that Arnold impersonator.
Wrong.
But I do think he embodies many elements of Mortal Kombat well, even if it is certain elements that I myself do not particularly enjoy. So this now brings us onto our last horror guest character, and that is the Woodsboro slasher, Ghostface. And this is a very interesting pick, even amongst all of the previous characters I've talked about, because Scream itself is living, breathing satire of the horror genre. It's meta and self-aware of its own subject matter, so the nature of the killer will fluctuate from movie to movie. And along with that, unlike the previous horror characters who typically lose a little bit of that mystique, Scream's whodunit style allows for that facade to remain continuous. So now again, how does he fit into the MK universe? Well, he settles in okay for the most part, and honestly, his biggest issue is that he's arguably the weakest on this list here. That is, until you watched this week's Kombat cast, because much like Freddy and the Alien, Ghostface has joined the exclusive club of guest characters specifically tailored to the MK universe, as it was revealed that there are in fact 3 killers, with 2 of them being Cobra and Kira. Now, if you know me, I'm not too crazy on these 2 characters. But man, I love these sort of integrations to the MK universe, because they do feel very seamless in nature. Whilst I still definitely do think they exist on the lower end of the spectrum, they seamlessly blend both worlds and franchises very well. So with that said everyone, that has been it for this video, talking, analysing, and softly ranking each of the individual guest characters. Truth be told, every single individual here does deserve a place in the MK universe, as they all belong in it in one way or another. It's just that there are some more tailored to it than others, and ones that definitely do shine because of it. Now, with all of these factors in mind and everything I've mentioned here, who would you say are the best horror characters in Mortal Kombat's history? Who was your favorite? And you know what? Who would you like to see again in the future? Please do comment down below. But for now everyone, that has been it for me. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and I'll catch you in the next one.